Good morning. Speaking from the Viewpoint dispensary here, high on the hill, WLCN. Program is Viewpoint. They're back and running again. Glad to be back.
How's the pneumonia coming?
Oh, it's still coming along. I think it's still there, but we'll work that out. We've got an exciting guest this morning. Normally, though, Mrs. Marquez, I like to start out with a kudo or two for the community, somebody or some organization in our great community of Logan County here that continually doing things. Today, Judith K., with your permission, I'd like to alter that just a little bit. You know the old expression about little things mean a lot? Well, lo and behold, apropos of my current status as health-wise, your fellow counselor, Jim Grimaldi, heard about that, and he volunteered to mow my grass.
No kidding.
Well, now, I want to tell you, that's a feel-good thing. I thought that was
That
really...
was so nice.
Well, it was. And number two, on Memorial Day, former councilman with your husband Orville, Dave Armbrust, called me out of God knows how many thousands in Logan County it went, but he and I are good friends, just called me to thank me for my service in World War II. Well, you talk about make your day. I called them now the Clint Eastwoods. They made my day.
Well, they did. It was almost worth being sick because that way you were home all the time to get these nice messages.
Yeah.
You see, try and look at the cup half full.
Well, yeah, and my cup is half full. It certainly is. And yours too, by the way.
I have an announcement to make that's about this coming
Wait a minute till I
weekend.
discuss this with our station engineer and manager.
You could take it out of my pay bill. If you're looking for something to do this weekend, Carroll Catholic School, bless their little hearts, over on 111 4th Street, in their gymnasium on both Friday and Saturday, are going to be having a big garage sale. So try to get yourself over there and see what they have for sale. You might find something that you need desperately. So that's at Carroll Catholic on Friday from 8 in the morning, which is before breakfast, till 7 in the evening, by the way. And on Saturday, which is the 1st of June already, Jim, this is another month gone now.
Down to 2.
8 a.m. to noon. So try to get over to Carroll to see what their goods are at their garage sale.
And maybe some of us, and maybe not, maybe it's too late, maybe not, might have something they want to donate to that. And sometimes we find, for instance, I came across an old set of golf clubs in my garage. Jeff helped me out there. And also a camping stove, which I hadn't used in I wouldn't know when. Took those out there to the Humane Society. They said they sold within about 10 minutes.
Is that right? Good.
And I just came across those at the last minute, hauled them out there, did two things. I got rid of them, and Humane Society picked up a couple extra bucks, so that worked out. Do you know, you mentioned the end of May is here, June, which brings up, now I know we've just gone through Memorial Day, as we well should. By the way, I was pretty proud of our neighborhood. We had our flags out en masse, didn't we?
It looked so nice. Bill started this, Natalie, and he asked us all to buy those small flags, you know, and line our sidewalks with them. And the 2 blocks there, did you notice that when you were walking, Jim? It looks so nice when you look down because everybody's sidewalk is lined with these flags.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah, he and Laura couldn't walk it. Every time they took a step, they had to stop and salute the flags.
And you should have seen all their dogs saluting.
That'd take quite a while to get down the side.
But I thought that was really neat. Having gone through Memorial Day, I'm reminded that June 6th will be Thursday. Monumental day in history, as we all know. And I would urge everybody to take and stop a couple of minutes and think about all those folks that participated in that. You know, I've had the pleasure of standing on that beach several years ago and standing there looking and just silently trying to take it all in and visualizing the pictures that we have all seen down through the years. And it's a pretty sobering moment. So,
I should suspect.
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh, yes.
Well, I think we probably ought to get to our guest this morning. Why don't you introduce our guest officially?
Officially. Natalie Falk Marquez is new young/old to Lincoln.
That's
Only
a
but
perfect
newbie.
way to describe it.
She grew up here and was very happy to see Steve when he left this morning because
Oh,
he was
yeah.
one of her teachers.
Oh, yeah.
Went to Lincoln Community High School. Her dad, her grandpa, I'm sorry, was sheriff for how many terms?
Oh, goodness.
Elmer
12
Folk
years running,
was
I believe.
The sheriff
I think that's about
forever.
right, Natalie.
Yeah.
Yeah, he really was. And at any rate, she's been gone for quite some while, and here she is back with her little family, going to live in the Painted Lady on Logan Street.
She plans to change that.
Wow.
How's
Yeah.
that?
June, I think, is the movement
the
date.
painted lady. You know, when they did that house there, that you are now working so hard and extensively, but also with a P, to restore.
Sure.
When they put all those colors on there, I always thought they just kind of went a bridge too far. And,
I would agree. I had a little one come up to me last year, I think, at the Fall Festival in Mount Pulaski, or it might have been at the Balloon Festival here, and she said, I heard you live in that clown house.
Clown house,
Yeah,
oh
she referred
dear
to it as a
heaven.
clown house because of all the colors.
Only
so.
a child.
Yeah, that's right. Yes.
Well,
I knew I was in trouble from that moment on.
I think it's interesting to note that one of the myriad subjects that you address in your law firm, the Gehlbach law firm, is agricultural law. And you know, I hadn't thought about that. Why? I don't know. I guess because we didn't have much agriculture on Victor Memorial Drive where I grew up. But here we have, and I remember hearing the quote one time that this county was 47-point-something% ag-related businesses. If
Absolutely.
not owning of farms, doing farming, then ag-related things, which covers many, many things. So we're very agricultural here, and I never thought about that as being something that someone would address. So I mean, in the old days, I suppose they just shook hands and said, you farm those acres, I'll farm these.
Oh, absolutely. There wasn't hardly the notion of contracts and things back in the day. A handshake got you about as far as you needed to get.
Well, and a man
people
was
were
worth
confident.
only what
Absolutely.
where that took him.
That's how I was raised, both granddad folk and my father.
That's right.
I suppose there's a
too
lot of
bad we
handshaking
can't
law.
still do that as much as we were able
Well,
to in the past. but-
Thanks to laws, that's really not possible in lots of areas anymore, I'm afraid.
Yeah, well, the wonderful thing about ag, and in fairness, my background was not originally in agricultural law. You know, it was in corporate law and healthcare for...
Yeah, we want to talk about that healthcare for just a minute,
Oh,
when we can
sure.
seg into it.
Oh, sure. But the thing with ag, when I came back to the community, you want to serve the people around you. You know, you want to give to the community using your skills, and
Yes.
in this community, ag is very important.
Pretty near
And it's
half of us.
absolutely, and ag actually is an industry. You know, so within that industry, you've got business, you've got real estate, you've got more than what you just think of as farming. I mean, it encompasses an entire industry which involves many different facets of law beyond corn and beans and planting and the typical agricultural ergonomics that we think of.
But Natalie, before we get into agricultural law, so to speak,
Sure.
I'd like to go back to, as they say, take it from the top.
Oh,
Or
sure.
in this case, take it from the beginning. Local girl, and on the way to school, became a lawyer, stopped me somewhere on the line and interject the correct points,
Sure.
and became pretty well knowledgeable about health laws.
Oh,
And that was your professional field, as I understand it.
Yeah, I was...
So correct me and straighten me out there somewhere.
Well, you're pretty much right on the money. I was born and raised in Lincoln, Illinois. I went to all the local schools. I went to Central School before it had been built up to what it is today. Beautiful buildings sitting there. And went to the local junior high and then to the high school. After that, I went over to the University of Illinois, Champaign-Urbana, go Illini, and spent 4 good years over there doing pre-law, and I double majored in psychology and political science. Applied to several law schools after that and found myself in Chicago at DePaul University, right downtown in the Loop.
Yeah.
So I've got strong ties to Chicago as well. A lot of our judges up in Cook County were alums of DePaul and some of the local law schools there. I decided I was having a lot of difficulty in law school trying to decide what area that I wanted to practice in. And I had a lot of interest, and it was proposed to me that I might think about healthcare as an option, because much like ag, touching into that, it encompasses an industry. And within an industry, there's all different facets of law. You've got contracts, you've got criminal, you've got civil, you've got real estate. In that sense, you practice in a numerous amount of areas, but within one industry. And I thought, well, there you have it. That's perfect. And I'm glad that I did, because I've had the opportunity to work at very large corporations, and they are corporations. Healthcare systems are corporations, and they run like any other business. I started at Rush Presbyterian. I was in-house there, and I found myself in at Provena Health, which is another large and local, I might add, health system over in Champaign, and some others downstate, affiliated systems. Thereafter, I was general counsel at a private equity firm that bought and disenfranchised and struggling hospitals, and we'd go in and we would build them back up. In fact, one feather in my cap is over at Ileana in Indiana. Was one of the hospitals that was failing and is now built back up thanks to that infusion of capital and whatnot. So I have a very strong corporate background that I apply across industries, including healthcare. I sit on the board at the local hospital, Abraham Lincoln Memorial Hospital, and as that relates to farming, with our leases and the issue of fracking that we're all hearing so much about. I mean, these are big industrial ideas, and there are large corporations behind almost all of those ideas.
Yeah.
And having someone that has a sophisticated background in corporate law can be nothing but useful in that industry. So I'm loving being back, and we have a lot of farm clients that come in, and we do everything with them from estate planning to helping them with their farm leases to just about anything that comes up. So
most of us don't realize the many facets of law that would pertain to agriculture. For instance, I have to read this because my memory's gone, among other things. The types of leases, cash rent, crop share leases, very important. That's right down to the basic level with the farmer and the tenants.
We see a lot of issues with some of that, because we have a lot of cash rent leases and people that come in that have verbal agreements, and there's a lot of different statutory rules when it comes to the difference between having a written lease versus having a verbal lease, and when notice has to be given in terms of terminating those leases. So we get a lot of questions in that regard. We're finding that it is serving people well to have written leases in this day and age, which generally requires getting together with an attorney from time to time, but we're not too scary. And
well, when you say agricultural law, I'm sure that there is no facet of law that's an entity unto itself. I'm sure that you bring in, just looking at this list on this printout, with the leases, and then on to all the other things that are involved. That's corporate law that you're bordering on. So there's nothing that's just an entity unto itself.
No. The comparison I had made before with healthcare is that ag is indeed an industry, and there are many different facets of that industry. spanning many different ideologies and socioeconomic systems, and you name it. What we see most, though, involves 1031 exchanges, real estate transaction, the sale of farms, the transfers of land, sophisticated title searches, going back, boundary disputes, which is real estate, essentially.
Sure.
A lot of my background has been real estate. I did a lot of mergers and joint ventures in real estate in the healthcare world, with the buying and selling of hospitals and merging with hospitals. And so all of those things come into play when you get into the industry here in Logan County. So I'm able to bring that experience to help our local farmers do the best they can for their families and their businesses, because that's what farmers are. They are CEOs. They are CEOs of their own business.
With expensive equipment.
That is no doubt.
Judith K., Mrs. Marquez mentioned a lot verbal agreements and verbal leases and so forth. Fortunately for her profession, and unfortunately for society, we've become a litigious society. And the old days of a good firm handshake and a look in the eye, I think they're long gone, unfortunately. And that's too bad. We need people of expertise, and in this community we have you have a lot of co-counselors who are very good lawyers.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think Judy and I thought in thinking about we always try to come up with another approach for Viewpoint, a different attack on one profession or another, try to showcase what we can do here and what we do in Logan County. And Judith and I got thinking about agriculture and law, and so that's why we have Natalie Folk Marquez with us today, to perhaps enlighten some folks to some of the possible pitfalls, some of the ways to make things a little easier as a plan. Farmland estate planning would be a huge thing.
Well, absolutely.
Particularly today.
And I'm glad that you touched on that, because I think that as attorneys, we're trained not only to resolve disputes and go into the courthouse when necessary, but we're also counselors. We are attorneys and counselors at law. I get a lot of questions about
Your
that.
psychology background fits in.
a little bit. I try not to bring too much of that in. I have to focus on the facts as they're presented to me. I don't like to draw too much from that area. I get myself in trouble. But one of our jobs, and this is what we're taught, and unfortunately you don't see a lot of it put in practice, is to prevent disputes before they occur. And as attorneys, when we're putting contracts together, that is an art form. That is being able to look into the future and understand an industry well, so that you can put things together that will hopefully prevent a future dispute. There's things embedded in that contract that hopefully can circumvent an ultimate dispute between the parties. I mean, your corporate attorneys, and again, I go back to my corporate background, that focus is putting these contracts and structuring these agreements in such a way as to avoid having to bring the parties back at a later date. And rather than sitting at the table as friends at that point, they're sitting as enemies. So that applies across the ag industry. It applies across the healthcare industry. I mean, it's a beautiful thing, really. And that's what we should be focusing on.
Well, anytime you're doing a contractual thing, it's subject to the law. The law as it is today, but the laws are a flexible thing. They're an ever-changing thing.
Don't think so. Ask the White House.
True.
Well, they're working or not in Springfield to get under the wire.
Absolutely.
And trying or not to get something done before they
Well, I can tell you all
shut
about that.
down.
You know, I worked for Senator Pate Phillip for 3 years when I came out of school. I was
well,
down
you
in the
also
Senate.
mentioned that you had been into political science.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that fits in then, doesn't it?
Oh, sure. That was actually my first job out of school. I was on the Senate Majority side down in Springfield on the Insurance and Pensions Committee. And Senator Brady actually was on that committee for a period of time. And President Obama sat on the other side of the aisle during that period of time. So, you know, that's another interesting facet of my background, because politics and law, when they intersect,
And they do.
they do. That is another art. And it all kind of comes together when you're dealing with sophisticated clients.
Well,
They need that type of background sometimes in an attorney so that they can mediate and negotiate in a sophisticated way without being too one-sided, I guess, or coming off too strong in one sense. You know, it's an art.
How in the world do you ever, with an ever-evolving law, how can you make a contract that's a forever thing, so that you can just put in the file and put it in the drawer and say, boy, that was a good one?
Well,
Most
in that
mergers should
regard,
be
you
that way.
cannot. You know, we can't control how the laws are going to evolve.
No.
Yeah.
But we can do our best with the knowledge that we have. And, well, for instance, understanding our jurisprudence of law, understanding how our justices come to the conclusions that they come to, it is possible to sit and think, now, if this were to come before X, Y, and Z court, how might the justices rule on something like that? How do justices get from point A to point Z? What is their analysis and reasoning, and what is our prior history of jurisprudence that gets them there? And that's, you know, one of my things, and anyone that works for me would be able to tell you, or has worked for me, that if I had my druthers, if I could get inside a law class, I would tell every one of those students to read the cases. I spent a lot of time reading the cases, and Katie McInerney, who's an associate attorney of mine, I mean, she can tell you that my law books that are sitting up in that office are tabbed and flagged and highlighted in a zillion different colors, but that is the only way for an attorney to learn how to think like a lawyer.
That's what drives it.
Absolutely. And today, unfortunately, you get a lot of kids that go out there, they learn that black letter law, they buy those manual outlines, it's kind of like the Cliff Notes, and, you know, that's just not enough, you know, so, but that's part of what goes into contract making. When we can't predict what the future laws may be, what we do know is the history of how those laws are made, and the history of the case law, and how our justices think about certain issues, so that we can better
Right.
plan to avoid conflict.
Speaking of planning, we never plan the exact moment for a commercial, but if we don't break for a
Oh.
commercial very quickly,
We'll leave it to a
we're going to
lawyer
have
to
serious
talk.
law problems. Go right ahead, Mr. Ash.